Hi, this is Tawana Freeman with the Black Life Coaches Network, and I am here with Coach Nick Dillon. He is our frame of reference coach. He is also known as the Believe Coach. And I tell you, Coach Nick, I am so glad you are here today. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
You know, the Evelyn Lozada situation, obviously, if anybody has heard, obviously there's a domestic violence case between Evelyn and her husband, Chad, who's an NFL, formerly of the Miami Dolphins NFL player. Well, Coach Nick, I am at the place where I want to first compliment Iyanla on her work with Evelyn. And I also want to point out that what she was able to do on television and coaching Evelyn before the incident between her and Chad was fantastic. That's a perfect example of what coaching is about and how it works if guests submit to the process. And Evelyn did that. So let's dialogue about your thoughts about the show when you witnessed it and any key points that you would like to kind of highlight as you even work with clients of your own who may have experienced the same situations.
One of the first things that I'd like to first compliment Iyanla on the show was that one of the things that I think was impactful for her, and it's also an excellent tool to use because I use it in my own practice, is to validate a lot of what she was trying to impart to Evelyn. She did some self-disclosure. And what was extremely impactful, she did self-disclosure all the way up to showing her an actual scar.
Oh, yeah.
On the side of her head where she herself had been a victim of domestic violence. And one of the main things that I've found, even when I've worked with individuals who might have that particular background or that experience, is that a lot of their feeling is that they're alone.
Right.
And a lot of domestic violence has to do a lot with I'm alone. I have this image that the public and my peers and my family want to see me, and I want to continue to embark that feeling out there.
Right.
And so I do a lot of camouflaging. I do a lot of putting on the face, and it doesn't work.
Right.
And one of the things that she also said that came out in the show was that it didn't really sink and have impact for Evelyn. And she stated herself was that until the scar became outward.
That is, it was a public embarrassment. It became obvious for everyone to see that she was in a place that she didn't need to be. It was the shame of it all. It was, I think for me, the light bulb came on when she actually said it was about being exposed and having other people comment about her life. And for many of us, no matter what area it is, whether it's relationship or leadership, it's being exposed for whatever it is that you lack or poor judgment or whatever. It's the shame of that or the potential shame of that causes people to continue to suppress or to cover up or camouflage. So, okay, continue. What else do you have to say about that?
What was also interesting, you talk about camouflaging and the contrast with exposure. On the second part, too, of her segment where she speaks to, what did you not tell me? You know, you weren't really honest with me in that first session. And what I find to be really interesting is that the key, another excellent coaching tool that Iyanla used was you have to own it. She was very careful in her language and really making Evelyn, even in some cases, rephrase things so that she owns it. Let's not talk in generalities. This is you. This is your experience. So you start that experience with the word I.
Right.
Which means I am making a choice and I am allowing different things to happen. Yeah. But more importantly, when you broke down to the surface of really what's going on, you got to peel the banana back and say, you know, it goes back to that lack of love. It goes back to that, that feeling and loss of her dad.
Yeah.
and even in some cases had built that anger up for Evelyn. And because there's a huge contrast there when we hear about her and we saw the clips of her relationship with Ocho. You saw in almost every segment with them two her emotion.
Absolutely.
On the flip side of that, when you look at her segment with Basketball Wives, it's this rough, tough, mean, cussing and fussing look, which is really a camouflage.
Absolutely.
Which means when you take that and you put that in the medium, you set yourself up for the public's interpretation.
Yeah.
So the mere fact that, it's still a legal issue right now, but the mere fact that what's out there is, well, you know what? I didn't do it. Or she hit me first. Well, what is our image of Evelyn prior to this?
Absolutely. And she was criticized. She was criticized heavily by the public because her image obviously portrayed one that would have thrown the first punch or caused it to happen. And I take issue, obviously, with anybody who would say that a person deserves to be hit, regardless if you are, the, aggressor or not. I appreciate Iyanla taking her through the process, but I even more appreciate Evelyn allowing us to learn from her. That was a huge price to pay. But there were so many women that were helped because she decided to put herself in a place and in a position where we can learn from her experience. And I know a lot of women were helped. And I know a lot of people were able to see who may not necessarily be already in the extreme where they're actually physically in a domestic situation where everything is physical at that point, but it could be mental. It could still be that verbal abuse, and all the indicators are there. And it was helpful to see from the first session and the second session with Ilanya the process you go through with identifying, getting clear where you are before it actually gets to that place. So you're right, that her sense of significance and self-worth were all on the table. And her issue with her father being the one necessary to validate that for her. In this case, she needed her father to validate her self-worth and her significance as a woman in this world. And we know that a male's opinion of a woman in this society matters. Huge. It absolutely matters.
You bring up a valid point. One of the things that I really emphasize in my coaching practice is that concept of security, significance, and self-worth. And what Evelyn showed us, and in a real small segment, is that what we have to do is, if you're approaching a relationship and you're seeking a relationship, you can't seek it because clearly she sought security in that relationship. She sought significance in that relationship. It defined her self-worth. When we remove that, you're totally exposed. You're totally exposed to really what is lacking. And when you talk and you use the term, and I believe they used that term during the segment, when you really talk to someone about true exposure, authenticity, this is you. This is the real you, and you might lack in these areas. Quite frankly, when you've got to do the work to build that up in you yourself, it costs you. That's another thing that came out in the show, was that it's going to cost you. You're going to have to do the work. And if you want to put on the camouflage and pretend that the problem doesn't exist, then it costs you even more in the long run. So that's why I'm real big on security, significance, and self-worth. They're personal characteristics we got to have. So when I'm coaching, I'm questioning and I'm asking things. And the first thing that's going to come out of my mouth when I'm talking with relationships, when I'm talking with someone seeking out a relationship is, how are you with you? If you're telling me you're struggling with self-image, with trust, with security, with feelings of significance, you're not ready for a relationship.
Right, absolutely.
If you've got some things in your life that there hasn't been any closure to, some childhood experiences that you're still dealing with in present day life, We've got to work through those so you have closure to those. You're okay with who you are. You're accepting of that. We build your confidence and self-image up with yourself. Then you're in a position to go out and at least quantify that. Absolutely. One of the things that we got to remember, if I have my own security, a mate enhances that for me, Absolutely. Not gives it to me. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you always got to remember is that if they decease today, if something happens with them today, I have to have those three things to continue life. And if I look for it in someone, besides just them enhancing what I already have, I'm going down a road of destruction, or certainly a long road to get out of the relationship what I really want.
Absolutely. Those are excellent points, Coach Nick. And I tell you, it is just such a powerful, it was a powerful lesson for us to learn. The show was fantastic. I give all the credit to Iyanla being able to connect from her own personal experience with Evelyn. I give Iyanla all kinds of credit and all the credit for being able to have insight and literally use her intuition to help guide her through that process, because it took a combination of things to narrow that baby down so that she could see what was really going on. And so all the way through the end. And the other thing that Iyanla did that showed the world how coaching works is she told Evelyn she was making herself available to her after the session, after the cameras were off. Another very honest and genuine place that coaches work from. That base of making yourself
ongoing
available.
Support.
Absolutely. Ongoing support, whether it's through email, phone calls, or face-to-face, being able to connect when it's necessary or needed. Even just, a very casual text message. I tend to do that with clients just to say, are you doing okay? Anyway, I thank you, Coach Nick. Those points were great. Security, significance, and self-worth. We know that those are three critical areas that we need to focus on in our lives. And as, a coach that works in a practice, but you're also in counseling, you have both sides of the spectrum. You understand the value of needing both at times. And so I appreciate your time. Is there any closing remarks that you want to give before we say goodbye for this session?
What I'd like to really just emphasize is that you mentioned it even in your last words also, is that we saw it in 2-hour segments. The reality is that took work. Mm-hmm. It is work. To work on yourself takes time, it takes energy, and it takes work. And it's easy for us to clam up and stay in our comfort zone. It's easy for us to shed out external support and help. You're right. I do like the fact that she extended herself, because whether it's counseling or coaching, you need the ongoing support as you work mentally through the process. The big thing that we've got to remember in relationships, and certainly because beyond that relationship discussion that they had, this is really about you as an individual. Absolutely. And how much you care about yourself. And you've got to love yourself first enough to be able to be raw, serious, authentic, and 100% exposure to yourself before you can decide you're going to do anything with someone else. Absolutely. And too often we do that because we seek it in someone else and we go lacking. And so if I can't impress upon, anyone who would perhaps listen to this enough, is that it's okay doing you if you're not ready for a relationship. Right. I'd rather work and continue to develop me so that when I go into a relationship, I'm giving the best of me.
That's right.
Not 25% of me and seeking that other 75% in someone else. I'm giving the best of me that I can give. And I think if you can do that and have those three things down pat, security, significance, and self-worth, then you're on your way to something greatness and successful.
Absolutely. Well, Coach Nick, thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I look forward to, coming back and talking about another hot topic.